Smart Sweets claims it contains 9% less sugar than leading candy brands. But is this actually true? I decided to test these claims using a blood glucose monitor. In my last video, I ate 300 calories worth of Nerds gummy clusters to mimic a 70-gram glucose tolerance test. These were my results after an overnight fast. You can see the spike and crash, definitely not good. For reference, 300 calories of Nerds gummy clusters contains 60 grams of sugar. So I wondered, if Smart Sweets claims it contains 9% less sugar, you'd probably expect to see a graph that looks more something like this. So I repeated the same test, this time eating 300 calories worth of Smart Sweets. After an overnight fast, these were my results. Crazy, right? There's basically no difference between Smart Sweets and Nerds gummy clusters. This shocked me because it wasn't half the spike or a quarter of the spike, but basically the exact same. This just makes me mad because it feels like they're trying to take advantage of people who are trying to improve their health and who are willing to pay a high premium to eat Smart Sweets products with the promise that they are healthier and contain 9% less sugar than leading candy brands. But when you actually test and measure what matters, your blood sugar response, it's all just a lie. So how can they make these low sugar claims? Well, if you look at the ingredient list, technically the word sugar isn't there. Whereas sugar is the first ingredient listed on the Nerds packaging. Instead, the first ingredient in Smart Sweets is isomalto-oligosaccharides. What is this ingredient, and is it just a fancy word for sugar? Let me just prepare you because there's a lot of opposing beliefs about this ingredient. Let's just start with Google's definition. Isomalto-oligosaccharides are short-chain carbohydrates, a mix of glucose units linked together, found naturally in foods like honey, but also produced commercially from starch to serve as low-calorie sweeteners and prebiotic fibers in processed foods like protein bars, beverages, and baked goods. Marketed for their fiber content and prebiotic effect, feeding good gut bacteria, some research suggests that industrial isomalto-oligosaccharides might act more like digestible carbs, raising blood sugar and not fully meeting the definition of dietary fiber, unlike natural forms. And then if we dig deeper and ask if it raises blood glucose levels, it says yes. Studies show that isomalto-oligosaccharides can cause significant spikes in blood glucose and insulin, sometimes to a similar extent as glucose itself. Isn't that crazy? This blows my mind. This is because despite claims of being a fiber, isomalto-oligosaccharides can be partially digested and broken down into glucose. Opposing this is Smart Sweets, who say on their website, do Smart Sweets contain isomalto-oligosaccharides? IMO, why? Yes, we use IMO, also known as isomalto-oligosaccharides or soluble tapioca fiber from IMO. IMO is a kick-ass replacement for the corn syrup that is found in traditional candy and plays an important role in candy and allows us to kick as many grams of sugar as possible while not causing stomach upset. IMOs used to be thought of as a fiber, but is now viewed as a non-digestible carb. A non-digestible carb simply means that digestive enzymes in our tummies do not react to the carb and turn it into simple sugars, but rather it passes through the body unprocessed, much like fiber does. Smart Sweets can say this because they're just parroting what the government food regulators allow. In Canada, this is done by Health Canada. Health Canada regulates isomalto-oligosaccharides as a novel food ingredient, and it's an accepted source of dietary fiber. However, there's now a growing body of evidence that shows that isomalto-oligosaccharides are nearly 85% digested by the body and do significantly raise blood glucose and insulin levels. Because of these results, this study concluded that isomalto-oligosaccharides should not be listed on food labels as a dietary fiber source. Isn't this crazy? Because the whole Smart Sweets brand and all of its products are formulated to be low sugar, but its first ingredient is basically 85% sugar. And they get away with it because food labeling standards are far behind the latest research, which is really unfortunate because diabetes is one of the fastest growing chronic diseases around the world. I mean, we shouldn't be that surprised. It took almost 15 years to get trans fats banned in Canada after the government knew and increased rates of heart attacks. I wish I could give Smart Sweets the benefit of the doubt. But because they're such a large company, there's no way they're this naive not to know the truth about the impact of their products. And if they do know, but they're not doing anything about it, that really sucks. Because the study that I highlighted, it's not new. It was published in 2018. And on their website, they state, we are committed to relentlessly researching, testing, and choosing the most advanced, innovative ingredients to create the delicious candy you know and love, while kicking as many grams of sugar per bag as possible. There's even a question asking how they test for sugar, saying they extensively test for many different types of sugar. My question is that are they testing this in a lab or are they testing this on real people using a blood glucose monitor? Because the research study also pointed out that in vitro, basically in the lab, resistance to pancreatic enzyme digestion has led nutrition companies to list IMO as a fiber. However, previous research has demonstrated that isomaltose itself is almost completely digested, 83% or more, by enzymes on the small intestinal border. And so I have to wonder, are they knowingly lying to consumers? Because if they are, they could be seriously misleading consumers. Like, this is lawsuit territory. There is so much misleading information on their website, but they get away with it because the wording is super vague. For example, there's a question that asks, are Smart Sweets keto friendly? The answer says, our recipe has the best overall impact on the body. What does this mean? And how can they say this if they haven't done a basic blood glucose test? And remains an option with radically less sugar than traditional candy. We are always working our hardest to get the net carbs as low as humanly possible, while keeping our pinky promise to you, delicious candy you know and love with no artificial sweeteners, added sugars, or sugar alcohols. We can't wait to hear how Smart Sweets works for you. So they don't explicitly say yes or no, but they're definitely implying that Smart Sweets is the best candy option for people on the keto diet, and that you should try it and let them know what you think. If you look up what the keto diet is, their number one goal is to keep blood glucose as low as possible, to be in a state of ketosis, which is a metabolic state where the body uses fat as its primary fuel source instead of sugar. The last thing you want to do is spike your blood glucose levels. I think Smart Sweets' answer is super misleading, and it really sucks because I personally know a few people who are diabetic and who are using the ketogenic diet to manage their diabetes. And they do consume Smart Sweets, sometimes almost daily, because they think it won't affect their blood glucose levels. And that's even a question on their website. Will Smart Sweets spike my blood sugar levels? With the answer, your blood sugar should increase to the expected amount for the net carbs on the nutrition label. Which again is super misleading because although the 4 grams of sugar is impressive, the net carbs are actually quite high. And this is not even considering the study that I cited earlier showing that 85% of the isomalto oligosaccharide fiber is digested. Highly processed carbs basically act like sugar because they are very quickly digested and absorbed by the body. So let's do a quick calculation to see how much sugar is actually in a pack of Smart Sweets. Their new formulation contains 4 grams of sugar and not 3 like the nutrition facts says, so they definitely haven't updated their nutrition facts yet. But thankfully, I have a bag in front of me here, and Amazon has the updated nutrition profile. The first thing most people will notice is the 4 grams of sugar written in big on the front. We think, cool, there's only 4 grams of sugar in this whole bag. I can eat like 5 of these, right? No, as Smart Sweets says, you have to count the net carbs. So we have 40 grams of carbs minus 19 grams of fiber equals 21 grams of net carbs, which is a lot because remember, this is basically just sugar. But we also have the isomalto oligosaccharides in the 19 grams of fiber, which according to the research paper is 85% digested. To be fair, Smart Sweets has more than one type of fiber listed in their ingredient list, but because isomalto oligosaccharides is the first ingredient, let's assume that it makes up about 60% of the fiber. So 60% of 19 grams of fiber is 11.4 grams of isomalto oligosaccharides, and 85% of that is digested, which equals to 9.69 grams of digested isomalto oligosaccharides, aka just carbs. To be fair, I'll round down, but there's basically 30 grams of highly digestible carbs or sugar per bag. Now, if you ate 300 calories like I did for this test, that is 69 grams of net carbs or sugar. Now, if we're comparing this to 300 calories of the Nerds Gummy Clusters, that has 70 grams of carbs or sugar. You can now see that these numbers make way more sense when we're comparing the blood glucose response than if we just looked at the amount of sugar. Because if we just looked at the sugar, Smart Sweets has 9 grams versus the Nerds Gummy Clusters has 60 grams of sugar per 300 calories. And this is where they trick you, where the numbers on the food label don't match the impact to our bodies. So the claim on the top right corner that Smart Sweets contain 9% less sugar than leading candy brands, that's basically a lie. It might technically be true based on government definitions of food ingredients and labeling, but to our body and how it's digested and absorbed, it's basically all sugar. So what should we make of all of this? After doing this test, I decided to see if I was the only one, and it turns out I'm not. This begs the question, are Smart Sweets even worth buying? One of the biggest complaints with Smart Sweets is how expensive they are. One pack of Smart Sweets at my local grocery store is $4.49 for 50 grams, versus the Nerds Gummy Clusters are $3.99 for 142 grams. Which means that Smart Sweets are more than 3 times the price. Clearly, we're paying a very high premium for something that should be way better, when it's definitely not. And we haven't even talked about the taste. Hands down, the Nerds Gummy Clusters are way better. But my biggest issue with this whole situation is how much they promote themselves and promise to be a low sugar option for diabetics and people on a keto or low carb diet. because some people use the ketogenic diet for very serious health conditions, like epilepsy, obviously diabetes, and some people are even using it to help treat cancer. So it's not a joke, and is potentially, unknowingly, having a serious negative impact on people's health. And this is further exacerbated by dietitians and health and nutrition stores spreading this message, saying how great Smart Sweets are for diabetics and people eating a low-carb diet. Honestly, I'm a little bit perplexed, because the whole founding story of Smart Sweets is a young girl wanting to make healthier candy for her grandmother. And don't get me wrong, it's an incredible success story. A few years ago, they sold the majority stake for $360 million to a private equity firm. At the end of the day, the information in this video is nothing new. A quick Google search will show the same results that I found in my experiment. Yet they have a whole team working on their formulation. So to not be aware seems impossible. If you're curious about the test that I did and maybe want to try it for yourself, check out my last video. Lastly, this is a big ask. This is a new channel. If you want to support the work that I do and will do, please hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot. Nutrition, fitness, food, health, they're all huge passions of mine. And I really hope to make this my full-time job one day. And every little bit helps. So subscribe, thumbs up, everything you can do. It means a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.